Elena stepped into the gallery at dusk on an unseasonably cool summer evening, drawn in by whispers of an exhibition rumored to warp reality. A dim humming glow emanated from ornate floor lamps, casting strange shadows across the tall, narrow hallway. Each wall displayed vibrant paintings of distorted faces, landscapes, and figures that seemed just shy of shifting whenever she glanced away. But the real lure lay deeper within, past a velvet rope and through a set of double doors hung with thick curtains. There was something about this place, sharply at odds with the rest of the city's art scene. Its reputation was legendary among thrill-seekers and connoisseurs of the macabre. It was said that after midnight, the paintings in the twisting gallery would come alive, feeding on the nightmares of those foolish enough to linger. Elena hadn't come for the rumors alone. She needed an escape from the static pace of her daily life, a break from the constant reminders of her own anxieties. She was an art restoration specialist by trade, used to seeing behind the illusions of color and form. Yet she felt a tremor run through her as she advanced into the main chamber. The hush felt uneasy, as if the building itself held its breath. A single security guard perched on a stool near the entrance, leaning back with his cap pulled low to hide his eyes. Oddly, no other visitors were there, and it struck her as strange that a space allegedly brimming with illusions should be so vacant. As she moved forward, the guard reached out a hand and murmured, "Last chance to exit." His voice was low and melodic, tinged with a note of caution, but something in Elena's chest clenched with determination, and she stepped forward regardless. The guard shrugged, then lazily pointed at a sign stating that the gallery would close in an hour. He warned her that only the truly daring remained after lights out. Elena felt a small thrill at the back of her spine. She showed her ticket, and the guard handed her a slim guide pamphlet, motioning her toward the gloom. The initial corridor gave way to a series of adjoining exhibit rooms. Each space was dedicated to a different phase of the Twisting Gallery's collection. In the first room, the walls were filled with enormous swirling abstracts. Pinks, yellows, and reds bled into each other, forming shapes that evoked the haze of half-remembered dreams. Center stage claimed a painting titled Hush, its edges thick with dried paint, layered in a swirl that threatened to spill right off the canvas. The swirling lines in the piece seemed almost alive under flickering overhead lights. Elena felt her heart beat faster when, for the briefest moment, one swirl unfurled into a mouth opening wide. She blinked, and the painting returned to its mundane state, a mere swirl of bright abstract color. She ventured into the second room, encountering eerie portraits. Each canvas showcased a single figure, their faces half in shadow, rendering the expressions incomplete. A painting named Regret showed a man whose eyes were ringed by swirling black brushstrokes. It seemed like he was forever on the verge of speaking, lips slightly parted, a look of anguish etched onto his features. Elena felt drawn forward, scrutinizing the brushwork so closely that dust motes from the floor rustled against her ankles. She studied the detail in the eyes, the textures in the man's weathered skin. For a moment, she detected a quiver in the corners of his lips, as though his face might shift. But the second she looked more closely, the motion ceased. She rubbed her arms, unsettled by the uneasy hush. The final exhibit before the main gallery was dedicated to illusions of motion, images that seemed to twist or slide if viewed from certain angles. The paintings were done in a jarring grayscale, splashes of bright red used to highlight abrupt corners or hidden figures. Now and then, Elena thought she saw faint shapes scuttling just inside the frames, as though trapped behind the canvas. She reminded herself that illusions were the gallery's claim to fame. Still, invisible weight pressed on her from all sides, intensifying the gloom. She checked her watch. An hour remained until closing. Her nerves hummed, but curiosity kept her moving forward. Elena stepped into the central hall, an enormous rotunda with an arched glass roof. A few scattered chairs were arranged in a circle around a platform. At the center stood a single painting draped in a dusty black cloth. The overhead lights buzzed. She wondered if this veiled painting was the fabled highlight of the Twisting Gallery. Some say it was genuinely cursed. At that moment, she heard a soft footstep. A tall, elegant woman with sharp features appeared by her side, wearing all black, with a small gold nameplate pinned to her blazer. It read, Maribel, curator. Her eyes were a shade too bright, her smile too polite, and the way she smoothed her long fingers over the black cloth sent a chill up Elena's spine. "Ah, a late visitor," the curator said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. "You must be very brave to arrive at this hour. Few do, unless they are seeking an unusual experience." Elena swallowed. "So it's true that the gallery changes after hours." Meridel's eccentric grin widened. "Not the gallery itself, dear, merely the illusions, the reflections of our own vulnerabilities." She tapped the cloth. "This is our prized painting, newly restored. We haven't unveiled it to the public yet, not officially. But you have a look about you that suggests you want to see beyond the mundane." She reached out with slow, almost ritualistic precision and pulled away the cloth. Beneath lay a painting of staggering detail, a hallway leading into darkness, walls lined with mirrors reflecting your own face. But each reflection wore a different expression: terror, regret, fury, heartbreak. Elena's breath caught. She saw herself in the reflection, though not exactly. It was as if the image had been painted to capture her every hidden anxiety. Her reflection's eyes brimmed with tears, a hairline crack running horizontally across her face, and felt intimately invasive, as though the painting had peered into the corners of her mind. Maribel chuckled softly and replaced the cloth. "You see how it stirs you?" she whispered, stepping away. "The twisting gallery does not rely solely on paint. It resonates with those who wander in the dark." L.A. shuddered, a fresh wave of unease washing over her. She turned to ask more, but Maribel was gone, leaving not even the click of her heels in her wake. When the final announcement that the gallery would close in 5 minutes rang out, Elena was hidden in a side passage, her heart pounding. She couldn't explain her need to remain past the posted hours. It was more than idle curiosity. The painting seemed to call to her on a personal level. She found herself in front of regret again, the painting of the tortured man. This time, she was sure she could hear a faint moan or sigh. The guard's voice, monotone and almost bored, echoed from the speakers. "The twisting gallery is now closed. All visitors, please proceed to the exit." But she stood there, paralyzed by intrigue and strange dread. She remained perfectly silent, half hoping, half dreading that someone would come force her out. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, slowly fading, until she heard the dull clang of heavy doors. Then the lights dimmed, plunging the corridor into deep shadow. A moment of silence followed, broken by her own breathing and the rush of blood in her ears. She was alone, yet not entirely, for the hush carried intangible voices. She heard something akin to whispering, so faint she could have dismissed it as her imagination. But then she noticed movement at the corner of her vision, a gentle ripple in the painting she stood before. It reminded her of a reflection in still water that someone had disturbed with a quiet touch. Her skin tingled. Then she heard it clearly, a man's voice, breathy, an anguished hush. "Help me," it whispered, so soft that she could barely distinguish the words. "I can't escape." Elena's throat constricted as she backed away, her eyes locked on the painting. The swirling darkness behind the man's figure seemed to twist, forming half-seen shapes. Her chest tightened with a creeping sense of dread. Still, she didn't run. With trembling fingers she reached out and gently laid her palm against the thick paint. It was cold, like old marble. The swirl of dark color beneath her hand moved, slowly at first, then more vigorously, until the swirling black parted, and for a heartbeat, she saw a face staring back. She gasped and yanked her hand away. Leaving the painting behind, she fled into the corridor. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor as she searched for an exit sign, but the path seemed different now, twisting in directions she didn't recall. The paintings hung at new angles, and corners looped back on themselves as though the architecture had physically shifted. Shadows scaled the walls, whispering with intangible voices. Elena's breath came in shallow bursts. She could feel panic building. She found herself in a smaller gallery room that she was certain hadn't been there before. Around the edges stretched a row of paintings, all done in a style reminiscent of Jackson Pollock, but rendered in black, white, and gray. In the center stood an odd installation, a mirror framed by twisted metal that reached from floor to ceiling. Something dark and fluid churned beneath the glass, as if the reflection itself were liquefied. For a moment, Alina considered bypassing it, but her heartbeat compelled her closer. The mirror at first revealed her own reflection, though cast in grainy monochrome. She inched closer, noticing her eyes were dark hollows. The reflection parted its lips as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, behind her, the reflection showed shapes crawling along the walls, elongated arms, jaws yawning in silent screams. She spun around, but the gallery behind her was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, the shapes behind her reflection swelled, approaching the copy of herself. She had the distinct sensation that if she didn't leave immediately, whatever was in that liquid reflection might reach through the glass and drag her inside. Holding her breath, she skirted around the mirror, scanning for a doorway. There was no visible exit except a shadowy arch that yawned open across from her. Tremors ran through her limbs, and she forced herself forward, heart thudding like a drum. The arch led to another corridor, narrower this time, lit by a meager flickering sconce that jittered shadows. As she moved down it, she felt an odd friction in the air, like stepping through cobwebs spun from whispered nightmares. The corridor opened into an unexpected lounge area. A hush fell over plush couches and a mahogany coffee table. It felt like stepping into a private parlor. Seated on a velvet armchair was the curator, Maribel, sipping something from a porcelain teacup. "Ah, my dear Elena, you've found our hidden recess," Maribel said with smooth aplomb. Her expression was serene, as if the swirling corridors and shifting artworks were nothing out of the ordinary. She gestured for Elena to sit. There was a pot of tea and a second cup waiting, as if arranged for a guest. Elena's mind raced, but she sank into the couch, if only to collect herself. "What is this place truly? It's not a normal gallery." "It's certainly more than paint on canvas," Maribel replied, pouring tea into the empty cup. The gentle chime of porcelain was almost soothing. "You see, each painting was cultivated from the minds of those who carry deep fears and regrets. The unwary who remain here past the stroke of midnight find themselves susceptible to the illusions woven into every brushstroke. They project your darkest thoughts, your hidden terrors, back at you." Elena's voice trembled. "But how can you allow this? It's terrifying. It's as if they come alive. I heard them calling to me." Maribel offered a cool smile. "Some come in search of that terror. For others, it's a form of catharsis or punishment. Often, the twisting gallery lets them face their fears in tangible form." She paused, letting her calm words sink in. "Some emerge stronger, others vanish." Her tone turned grave on the last word. Elena set her untouched teacup down, hands shaking. "I don't want to vanish." Maribel's eyes flickered. "Then you must master your fear. The illusions feed on it. If you can resist giving in, you will find the exit. But if your fear overwhelms you, you'll linger indefinitely in the gallery's grasp." She stood fluidly, gliding toward a nearby door. "Follow me. There is a possibility for you to reclaim control." Elena followed the curator down yet another corridor. Each painting they passed seemed to watch them, as though eyes formed in the swirling pigments. The walls themselves gently pulsed, almost breathing. She kept close to Maribel, who carried herself with an eerie serenity. Eventually, they arrived at a locked door. The curator retrieved a heavy key from her blazer pocket and turned it in the lock. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a circular room lined with a single continuous mural. The overhead light here was faint and golden, illuminating shapes that merged and warped. Maribel gestured at the mural. "Step closer. Confront the illusions, and you may break their hold." Elena approached with cautious steps. The mural depicted scenes of an anguished crowd, each figure wearing a mask of doom. Some were half submerged in swirling color, others screamed silently through parted lips. Then, she spotted a depiction of a woman that looked uncannily like her, brown hair twisted into a messy bun, green jacket flung open. A second version of that woman lay collapsed at her feet, half consumed by blackness. As Elena watched, the mural's paint began to sweep together like water, forming new shapes. The version of her in the mural turned to face her directly, eyes wide with terror. A flicker of recognition ran between them, and Elena felt something tearing at her mind, as if the images sought to root out her deepest insecurities. She fought for composure. Dread welled in the pit of her stomach. Memories of her hardest moments flashed through her consciousness. Failing an important project at work, a betrayal by her friend, the haunting guilt over her father's final days. She had never fully confronted these regrets, always pushing them aside. Now they threatened to consume her. The woman in the mule reached out, and a host of disembodied hands followed, swirling in the paint like a crashing wave. With a jolt, Elena realized she risked losing herself if she surrendered to these haunting reflections. She clenched her fists, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I'm not your victim," she hissed, fixing her gaze on the swirling illusion. A spark of defiance flared within her. She imagined a sense of calm, breathing deeply, as if each exhale pushed back against the strangling illusions. The mural sputtered, paint dripping and bleeding color into the floor. The surge of hands retreated. The image of Elena in the painting lost cohesion, dissolving into an aimless swirl of light and dark. At her side, Maribel inclined her head. "Well done," she said softly. "Not many can maintain composure." Maribel led Elena deeper through a maze of passages. She was beginning to see pattern in how the hallways slithered one into another. When she concentrated on the next step, rather than worrying about what might be around the corner, the corridor seemed less chaotic, the illusions less potent. Occasionally, paintings would still quiver, colors undone by her presence, but their whispers grew fainter, as if they sensed she was no longer so easily manipulated. Finally, they arrived at a set of elegantly carved wooden doors. Maribel set her hand against them. "Beyond here is the final trial," she murmured. "If you pass, the exit corridor awaits." Elena steadied herself. "And if I fail?" Maribel's gaze was grave. "You risk being consumed by your own nightmares, with no guarantee of return." Heart thudding, Elena stepped through. The massive gallery room inside featured a single enormous painting that stretched from floor to vaulted ceiling. It was a panorama of horrors. A looming, apocalyptic sky filled with swirling black clouds, cratered land below dotted with shadowy figures. A metallic tang seemed to emanate from the paint, and the entire piece glistened in the dim light. Piercing shapes emerged, creatures with elongated limbs, half-human forms merged with beasts, their mouths turned upward in silent howls. In the center of the painting was the door to a house. A sign out front read, "Welcome Home." Elena recognized her childhood home in that painting. She had grown up in a small white house with a sun-bleached porch. But here it was twisted, decomposing. The windows shattered, the walls peeling, the door was cracked open, blackness waiting inside. She was drawn to it in the painting, compelled to approach. As she stepped up, she could almost smell the dust and mold drifting out from that open door. The illusions pressed in around her, conjuring recollections of arguments, blame, and the sense of failure at not saving her father from his illness. Her father had always told her not to blame herself, yet guilt had carved a permanent place within her. The swirling sky overhead rumbled. Thunder sounded against the walls of the real gallery, though no storm lay outside. She felt the sting of tears. A voice, quiet but firm, rose in her consciousness, urging her to step away, to keep moving. But some part of her yearned to reach inside that void, as if she might find closure. She took a trembling step forward, her reflection mirrored in the paint's glassy surface. Her eyes glistened, her lips pressed tight. Memories battered her mind, her father's comforting words, the last phone calls she'd ignored, the hospital room's beeping machines that she couldn't banish from her nightmares. She had never truly forgiven herself. Images in the painting writhed, and the blackness near the door grew denser, forming a silhouette. She recognized the shape of her father's figure, though it was distorted, unnaturally tall. His face was etched in sorrow. In the flickering gloom, the shape reached out, beckoning her closer. The thunder inside the gallery crescendoed. She teetered on the precipice, pulse hammering. Then two contradictory urges warred within her, one to flee, the other to face what she had to face. Gripping the frame's edge, her fingers brushed the painting's surface. The silhouette inside the open door loomed, but she forced herself to speak aloud. "I'm sorry," she breathed, voice cracking. "I should have been there more, but I loved you with all I had." Tears streaked her cheeks, and she pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "I won't be defined by this regret anymore." She bowed her head, letting the roiling surge of guilt wash over her and dissipate. Gradually she was aware that the painting's ominous thunder softened to a distant murmur. The silhouette in the doorway receded, the figure's shape dissolved in a swirl of paint. With a final shimmer, the entire scene stilled, returning to a static image devoid of menacing illusions. Elena staggered backward, breathless. The mounting tension fell away, replaced by a raw ache, yet also a faint sense of liberation. She turned to find that Maribel stood quietly at the doorway. "Your courage has made the illusions fade," the curator said softly. She opened a door on the opposite side of the gallery. There, a winding corridor led to an exit sign shining like a beacon. Elena walked steadily toward the exit sign, knees weak but resolve firm. Past those doors, the apparently impossible geometry of the twisting gallery melted into a more conventional hallway. Light from a distant glass door promised a return to the outside world. She caught a glimpse of the guard's desk through a side window. The guard dozing with his feet propped up, cap pulled over his eyes. That felt oddly normal, as if time had never passed at all. She wondered how long she had truly been trapped in the illusions. Earthy night air greeted her when she finally emerged onto the deserted street. The city's lamps glowed softly against the darkness, a gentle breeze brushing her face. Shaken but relieved, she stepped carefully onto the sidewalk. The twisting gallery behind her looked no more threatening than a grand old building, lights off, doors locked. With a final shaky exhale, Elena realized she was free, but the experience had left a deep mark. She turned around to see if there was any trace of Maribel or any sign that might unravel the mystery. She saw only her own faint reflection in the locked glass doors. Yet within that reflection, her eyes looked different, softer, calmer, as though she had wrestled with her own demons and come out the other side more whole. Days later, Elena would revisit the twisting gallery during normal daytime hours, curious to investigate or at least confirm that she hadn't dreamt it all. Yet she found the doors closed, a for lease sign peeling at one corner. When she tried to peer through the windows, the interior appeared hollow and stripped. There were no paintings inside, nor any sign of the bizarre illusions. Dust motes floated past barren walls. It was as if the gallery had never existed in the form she remembered. She asked a nearby shop owner about the place and only received a puzzled shrug. They mumbled something about the building being vacant for years. Elena lingered on the sidewalk, her mind reeling with question. Had the twisting gallery been a shared hallucination, a fleeting phenomenon conjured by supernatural means, or simply a manifestation of her own longing for closure? She could hear echoes of Maribel's whisper. "Illusions reach deep, reflecting your hidden truths." Maybe the gallery was a test, a place for those who needed to confront the burdens they carried silently. She let out a slow breath and glanced at her own reflection in the window, remembering how it had warped and flickered that night. This time, she only saw a determined woman with the faint beginnings of a smile. Perhaps some mysteries were best left unsolved. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the quiet street, leaving the twisting gallery and its painted horrors behind. Yet she carried a piece of it with her, a reminder that the darkest corners of one's mind can only truly be conquered by facing them head-on. And in the quiet gloom of that strange, vanished place, she had done just that.